Hi, I'm Erik Voss, and as we still try to recover from Game of Thrones Season 7, one big theory a lot of you guys are asking about is Bran the Night King. Basically, will Bran Stark use his abilities to see through time and influence past events to warg into the body of the first man who became the Night King thousands of years ago, get trapped in that body, and then become the Night King that we know and fear today? Now, I'm going to quickly explain this theory and all the interesting evidence for it, why it's gaining traction, and my personal take on all this. And by the way, I'm going to mention some stuff that happens in the Season 7 finale, so spoiler warning if you haven't watched it yet. And don't worry, yes, the finale breakdown is on its way, if it's not already out by the time you're watching this. Editors are currently working on it. I can see them. Please hurry. Okay, sorry. Okay, here we go. Okay, so the theory is that Bran Stark will, and has already, used his powers to try to prepare Westeros' past for the war with the others, the White Walkers. Remember, Bran did use his abilities to warg into Hodor's body in the past to save himself in the future. And according to the previous Three-Eyed Raven, Game of Thrones' explanation for this type of time travel is that it's predestined, that it was always meant to be this way.
The past is already written. The ink is dry.
So when you look at it that way, Bran technically didn't change anything when he affected Hodor's mind in the past, but rather Hodor was always going to have that particular seizure and wake up mumbling the words "hold the door" into Hodor, and Bran merely fulfilled that step in both of their destinies. So this theory is that Bran in the future will do a similar thing with the Night King after multiple failed attempts at using his abilities to influence the past in other ways. So here's where this theory merges previous Bran time travel theories that we brought up before. First, Bran projected himself to King Aerys II, the Mad King, speaking to him as a whisper in the wind, kind of like how he did with his father at the Tower of Joy.
Father!
Now, in this case, Bran will have tried to convince Aerys to produce and store quantities of wildfire to defend the realm against the White Walkers, urging him to, quote, burn them all. But then these whispers would have driven the Mad King mad, causing him to instead use the wildfire to burn up his political enemies and plunge the realm into rebellion. So after that first attempt fails, Bran, according to the theory, will go back a second time, 8,000 years earlier, right after the Long Night, the last time the White Walkers descended from the far north. At this point, Bran could influence his ancestor and his namesake, Brandon Stark, Bran the Builder, the founder of House Stark. That Brandon famously oversaw the construction of the wall using the help of giants and the magic of the Children of the Forest, with the whole goal of keeping the White Walkers out. Now, it's even possible that our Bran could actually be that Brandon. Legend says that Bran the Builder began constructing even as a young boy. And as we've seen before, when Bran projects himself into the past, he can walk. But as we just saw in this past Season 7 finale, that major defense measure eventually epically failed to stop the Night King from advancing. So that will lead to Bran's third attempt to influence the past by warging into one of the First Men during the war between the Children of the Forest and the First Men, the thing that led to the White Walkers, and trying to convince them to never create the White Walkers to begin with. And according to the theory, the Children of the Forest won't recognize this First Man, will view him as a threat, and instead take him captive and go through with their plans anyway to convert him into this supernatural weapon. And it's at this point when Bran will get trapped inside this body and lose himself. Remember, that's a possibility that Bran has been warned about before. In Season 4, Jojen Reed cautioned Bran against warging into Summer's mind for too long.
I know it's tempting. If you're trapped in summer for too long, you'll forget what it was to be human.
Then in Season 6, the previous Three-Eyed Raven repeated this wisdom.
It is beautiful beneath the sea. But if you stay too long, you'll drown.
And then in the episode after that, the Three-Eyed Raven said this.
I've told you many times, stay too long where you don't belong, and you will never return.
Now, there are a few key parallels between Bran and the Night King. For one, both characters appeared to be greenseers. They know when future events will happen. Remember, the Night King knew where Bran was going to be when he marked him. Some people have even said the characters do look similar. When Bran projects into the past, his doublet does kind of match the Night King's. At least it would probably feel awkward both showing up to the same party wearing that. And ever since they've cast a new actor to play the Night King and are using more makeup and prosthetics on his face instead of CGI. That actor's nose does have a similar shape to Bran's nose, but I would say, perhaps most interestingly, there was the specific direction of the Night King's creation scene. Notice how when Leif approached the man with the dagger, the camera cuts back to Bran as he clings to the roots of the weirwood tree, almost as if he himself is bracing for some kind of pain. And then later in that scene, when Leif explains to Bran what he just witnessed, notice how Bran is posed against the weirwood roots, just like the Night King was, with Leif bearing down on him. Okay, this theory has some very interesting implications. One, if it were true, it would give new meaning to the three-eyed ravens promised to Bran at the end of season 4.
You'll never walk again, but you will fly.
Now, at the time, the assumption was that that meant Bran would be the next three-eyed raven, or that he could warg into a dragon, or maybe fly through time. But now, if this theory's true, it could refer to the Night King flying on the back of his resurrected Viserion. Also, this could explain why Bran's rapid-fire visions in season 6 included this particular shot of a dragon's shadow over King's Landing. Of all of those images, this is the only one that remains kind of unexplained. So this could be from the Night King's perspective as he eventually flies Viserion over the capital. But really, now that it seems like the final battle of Game of Thrones will be this one-on-one combat between champions, Jon Snow as the champion of men and maybe champion of the Lord of Light, and the Night King as the champion of the Army of the Dead, this would pit Jon against Bran, giving this battle even more emotional stakes. Whew. Now, hold on to your butts, because we got a big butt coming. Let's back in the butt. Here's a butt. Oh, that's a massive butt. Now, let's wake up from this vision, come back to reality for a second, and admit, while this is a very interesting theory, all logic in my brain says that this is probably not the case. I mean, let's face it, this theory is pretty loosely based on conjecture and coincidence. Like, lots of people wear doublets in Game of Thrones, guys. And there are probably lots of green seers and wargs in this world. A lot of people have that nose, but mostly I have two bigger hangups with this. For one, this still wouldn't explain any more about what the Night King wants, why he's evil to begin with. Like, I think that mystery is a big reason why this theory is so popular. We still don't know shit about the Night King and what the White Walker's goals are. By the way, I actually went into a different theory about that a few months ago. It involves the Children of the Forest and the Isle of Faces on the God's Eye. I still think that could be true. But Bran getting trapped inside the Night King for thousands of years doesn't tell us what caused the Night King to originally want to kill humans and use their body parts to make gang symbols and raise an army of the dead. Whoever that is, that's not Bran, that's somebody else. And who is that? We still wouldn't know. My second hang up is I just don't think Game of Thrones is gonna spend its final 7 episodes dealing with complicated time travel mythology. Game of Thrones is not a show about time travel. It's a show about violent medieval war games with supernatural elements that's designed to make us too okay with incest. And I think if the writers wanted to go down that time travel rabbit hole more, there probably would have been some other moment since the Hold the Door episode that showed Bran projecting himself through time more actively, trying to meddle with things and influence events, all to better establish how exactly time travel works in this universe. Instead, notice how they've kind of moved on from Hold the Door, now making Bran more of a witness to these events. Now, I know there is a neatness to believing that Bran Stark is responsible for all these major historical events, but bear in mind that would also take away responsibility from all these characters, which would contradict George R. R. Martin's main agenda with the A Song of Ice and Fire series. What would a medieval fantasy look like if it truly reflected rulers from history, many of whom were, yes, mad, paranoid, cruel, impulsive, traitorous, foolish, superstitious, noble to a fault, and yeah, super incestuous? However, I don't think Hold the Door was just gonna be a one-off moment either. I still think that that moment was symbolically opening the door for Bran's powers to play a more active role in this endgame. And yes, I do think that includes revealing that Bran will, and perhaps already has, influence past events in some other way. But I predict, like Hold the Door, it's gonna be a more emotionally cathartic event that ties into the characters and the themes of the show, rather than just some mind that leaves everyone confused. For example, I've said this before, but I still think it's possible that Bran grows old to become the same three-eyed raven whom he met under the tree, projecting back to himself in the past, counseling his younger, broken self into unlocking his inner strength and playing a role in the wars to come. For me personally, that would close the loop of Bran's character arc and keep his story self-contained. Other than that, I think the real function of Bran's time travel abilities will continue to be the primary way the show has already used it so far: to revisit these key key moments from Westeros' history that characters need to see to motivate their present goals. The Tower of Joy, Lyanna and Rhaegar's secret wedding, Bran repeating to Littlefinger that, quote, chaos is a ladder. I think that approach is far more dramatically resonant and much truer to the kind of show Game of Thrones is, which constantly features characters echoing past conversations, following the footsteps of leaders from the past, and trying to escape their shadows. Do you think Bran could be the Night King? Or do you think it's more likely that he could be some other character like the Three-Eyed Raven? Also, what other past events do you want to see Bran revisit in Season 8? The backstory of Westeros is filled with amazing events that I'd love to see. Battle of the Trident, the tourney at Harrenhal, the burning of Summerhall, Aegon's conquest. Go on, let your imagination fly down in the comments below, or tweet me at Erik Voss or at @NewRockstars, and yeah, keep an eye out for my even more in-depth breakdown of the finale episodes. And if you like, you can help us make more of these theory videos by contributing to us on Patreon. Big thanks to all of our donors, especially Kelly Hopper. All right, thanks for watching. Bye.